Me, 27F with my husband, 26M of 4 years. I am lying to him about cheating. My spouse has a fetish, which I just discovered. When we first met, that was fantastic, the finest I'd ever had, and I told him so, believing he'd appreciate the sincere remark. I was the more experienced of the two of us, and we both knew it, so I reasoned that this positive reinforcement would be beneficial. It seemed to do so at the time, but in light of the latest disclosure, I'm rethinking that. There were no significant issues in our relationship outside of the bedroom, and there wasn't much of a problem there. Our intensity faded after a time, but I was never dissatisfied, and I assumed he felt the same way. Recently, though, he's been strangely inattentive, and I could tell he wasn't really getting off, despite the fact that he always attended to my demands. He first claimed to be weary, but that explanation rapidly fell apart. We eventually set aside some time to have a lengthy chat about the subject, albeit he pretended that he was just doing it for my benefit. He attempted to play it all off, but I could tell he was concealing something. I probed him, and he admitted to having a fetish. At first, I didn't comprehend what he was saying and believed he was accusing me of adultery. I automatically assured him that I had never cheated, and he told me that he knew, but had simply gotten carried away with the concept. I wasn't sure what to think once he described things more thoroughly. I think I was a little freaked out, despite my best efforts to hide it. It's a kink I don't understand. I try to put myself in his place, but the thought of him and another woman makes me nauseous, so I still don't understand his desire in the opposite. But since I adore him, the conversation shifted to how we might integrate this into our bedroom to better fulfill him. Now that it was all out in the open, he was quite excited and soon proposed we arrange something up, with him getting a buddy to me in front of him. That notion was instantly rejected by me. I couldn't get beyond the fetish's basic existence. I didn't like the notion of him having with someone else, and the thought of me doing it was only marginally less repulsive. Doing so with someone we both knew while my spouse looked on was utterly out of the question. Next, he recommended I tell about experiences I had with some of my prior lovers, and he questioned whether I was being really honest about my past comparisons. Maybe I should have simply lied then, but instead I immediately convinced him that he was my most gratifying and emotional relationship. I didn't sure what to think when he seemed a little disappointed. He didn't question me for a second. We eventually came to an agreement that I would have a one-night stand with a stranger. I wasn't pleased, but I could see how delighted he was about the possibility. He improved dramatically immediately after our conversation. For a while, I thought that this dream would be enough to make him forget about really doing it. He didn't, though, and continued bringing it up inconspicuously till the night arrived. I dressed up in ways I hadn't done in years, and my husband couldn't stop smiling as he walked out the door. I then proceeded to a nearby pub where I was unlikely to stumble across someone either of us knew. I was nauseous the whole way, and when I arrived to the pub, I simply began drinking, feeling awful about what I was doing. Guys hit on me, which would have been flattering in any other situation, but now it only made me feel worse. I scarcely said anything to any of them, and soon they got the point, leaving me alone to drink and drink. I'm not sure whether I had any ambitions of picking up a man that night, but if I did, they didn't last long. I couldn't even pretend that I was going to follow through on this. At this time, I was really inebriated and didn't want to face my spouse. I took a cab to a girlfriend's house and practically requested that I pass asleep on the sofa. Given how I was dressed and how intoxicated I'd been, I could tell she had a lot of questions the following morning. She plainly assumed I was experiencing problems with my husband, but I had no intention of giving her the specifics, so she was kind enough to leave it at that. I went home to my spouse, unsure if I should tell him everything or simply pretend I'd done it. The truth is, he was ecstatic with what he believed had occurred. I had the best of my life, and he appeared to have the same. I'd done some research, so instead of my normal flattery, I criticized him this time. I hesitantly compared him to the non-existent other person at first, and that really got him into it. Our problems in the bedroom were gone. I could have lived with myself if that was all there was to it. I wasn't thrilled about lying to my spouse, but it seemed reasonable given the circumstances. He's been implying that he'd want me to have another night out since it shouldn't be a problem now that I've done it before. If I do it again, though, I know I have no intention of following through with it. I had fooled myself the first time into believing I'd do it for him. If it happens again, I'll probably go drunk at a girlfriend's house with the purpose of lying to him in the morning. I have no intention of discussing this with anybody I know, which is why I'm shouting on the internet. My genuine quandary is that, in comparison, I'm not too worried about lying to my spouse again, and this disturbs me. I've always been entirely honest with him, and I feel he has been the same with me, save from his sudden disclosure of this obsession. The point is, this doesn't seem to be a significant untruth to me. I'm not cheating on him. He simply believes I'm and gets excited about it. I don't need to cheat for his dream to work, and it's better for both of us if I don't have anonymous with strangers. The only difficulty with my planned course of action is that it requires fooling my hubby on purpose. Story 2. Wife, 36F, cheated on me, 35M, after 10 years of marriage, now suggests open marriage. 10 years of marriage. Our relationship is international in the sense that we are from different nations and have lived in several places across the globe together, including her home country and mine due to my employment. We are both conversant in each other's native languages. We have 3-year-old twins. Our life has progressively diminished after having children. We've had vaginal twice in the past year. Only a couple times orally. Last year was no better. She isn't usually affectionate with me. I've never cheated on her, despite the fact that she often suspected me early in our relationship. She didn't work, or just worked briefly during the most of our 10 years together. When she did, it was because of employment I got for her. I completely constructed a well-paying profession for her, which she began 5 months ago. This is the longest she has worked. Even when I was on disability leave for a neurological disease a few years into our marriage, years before we had children, and we were spiraling further into debt, she didn't seek for employment. I made money, while primarily bedridden, by running a side company when I had the energy. Since my recuperation, I've maintained a good profession, paid off our debts, traveled the globe, and so on. Not wealthy, but comfortable. I just discovered that she has been messaging an ex-boyfriend for months. She'd contact him and then erase her message and answers. I discovered her doing something similar, most likely with someone else, 18 months ago, and had long suspected, particularly when she traveled to another city with a girlfriend, while we lived in another nation, and contacted his number there. It was 8 years ago. She claimed that nothing occurred and that she just went to see an old buddy while she was there. The call came in around 2 a.m. They referred to one another as baby. I was home from work one day with a migraine when I saw her sending messages to him, promising to give him medication for his pain while ignoring me. She returned to her hometown to see relatives for a week during a national holiday and ran into him. I was left at home with our kids. I noticed her texts indicating that she intended to visit him there. She maintains they had no intercourse. I don't trust her. I don't trust her since she lies and only confesses the precise facts I tell her I have evidence of. I don't believe her since I told her I wasn't comfortable with her having covert communications with an ex-boyfriend, which she regularly deletes. She informed me that he texts her from time to time, but she typically ignores it. She deletes it because she is afraid I may misinterpret it. She promises to cease talking to him. After a few months, I discover she's been speaking with him virtually every day while we're both at work, then erasing it before the day is done. This time, I retrieved some texts. She was accosted by me. Same story. He texts me sometimes, but we seldom communicate. I informed her that I was aware of the daily contact. I'm lonely. I appreciate the attention. Nothing improper. I don't need him. I confronted her with the contents of the messages and made it obvious that I understand it's an emotional affair, which she ultimately concedes, but she claims there has been no, and that she's not interested in with anybody, not just me. When I asked her whether she saw him when she returned home, she lied and said no. I approached her with proof of their arranged meeting. Yes, we did, she said. I apologize. I inquired as to whether they had. No, she answered. I don't have any evidence to the contrary. Prior to confronting her, she recommended I go on a weekend trip as a treat for taking care of the kids alone for a week while she was visiting relatives. She had no idea I was aware at the time. When I attempted to reschedule the day of my trip, she became furious and I became suspicious. After I confronted her and informed her of the proof, she eventually admitted she was mistaken and said that she would no longer contact him. Her texts were obtained by me. She told him she needed time to think about it, that it wasn't appropriate to go on like this all the time. You need to think about those too. He added, I'm assuming he was referring to my twins. Perhaps I can't see you, she said. You should not return here. My flight is tomorrow morning, he added, the day she suggested I go traveling. Are you not committed to us? He inquired. She then dialed his number. I questioned her about it afterwards. She intended to bring him to my house, where my boys are. How many times had she seen him in this place? How many times had she seen him on her way home without me over the years? She said that she had no intention of seeing him here and had instructed him not to come, that she'd never met him here, and that this was a new relationship, conveniently only starting as far back as I have documentation. She requested that I attempt to forgive her. I was told that I could sleep with other women for my intimacy requirements. I told her I couldn't stand it if she slept with other guys, and she claimed she wouldn't. I informed her that I don't want to sleep with other women and that I want a committed marriage. After considerable thought, I decided to forgive her and give her another opportunity. After all, we've been together for 10 years. I owe it to her and my children to give it a go. I told her that I would work on forgiving her, but that if she did anything like this again, we were done. I later discovered that she has been using another messaging app, installing it as soon as we are separated and erasing it before she returns home. I can't view any of the stuff that's there. I clung to that information for a few weeks, thinking she'd stop and that it was just a coincidence. This pattern of action has persisted. Last night, I questioned her about it. Are you still conversing with him? Now you're using chat app, installing it while we're separated and deleting it when we reunite. She claims she isn't speaking to him. Because she knows I can view the primary chat app she uses, she utilizes it for private talks with pals. I don't have any additional evidence, and I can't acquire it with this program. She is aware of it. She may be having an affair with someone on there and I'd have no way of knowing, so she doesn't feel obligated to reveal anything more than what I already know. I don't trust her. I told her I didn't want her to stay. She claims she'll leave if I ask her to. She didn't plead, scream, struggle, or express regret. She asked whether I could manage the kids on my own, and I said that I could. I've been the more engaged parent, while she hardly looks up from her phone. She said that they need their mother. I told her she should have considered it before making these decisions. She claims she will not leave me if I meet other ladies. She is devoted to our family. Our connection is unique, yet it is solid. She plainly has no intention of quitting and does not believe she is doing anything wrong. She proposes an open marriage, allegedly to meet my demands, but I suspect it's so she may do anything she wants guilt-free. I'm looking for some feedback on this. I want we could have a loving, warm, loyal, and equal relationship. In retrospect, it was never equal, loving just as long as I supplied, and may be viewed as loyal as long as she could conceal it. I'm at a loss on what to do. The rational thing to do would be to divorce, retain my children, and go on, but love is illogical. There's also the matter of my children to consider. Should I pursue open marriage only to keep my marriage afloat? Should I put an end to it now? I feel like a complete